we're finally doing it. Battle Network 6, the grand finale and my favorite in the series. For most of these games, I just kinda picked them up whenever I'd saved enough allowance and limited myself to one cartridge each. But with Battle Network 6, I grabbed both Cybeast Gregar and Cybeast Vulture at launch, and did not regret the double dip. I remember loving the crosses, being heavily invested in the story, listening to the soundtrack over and over again, but the games being kind of soured for me due to the lack of a Japanese exclusive dungeon which contained the one chip I needed to complete my last program advance to 100% the game. I was never lucky enough to get the code I needed from some random green data. It's been reinstated with the Legacy Collection though, and while I'm still working on a full completion at the time of this review, with that one caveat no longer hanging over my head, I can enjoy this playthrough to the fullest. I'm Wes, the Explosion, and today we're gonna see if Battle Network 6, originally for the Game Boy Advance, manages to live up to my lofty memories. All good things must come to an end, and that includes Lan's time in ACDC. The game starts out with him saying goodbye to his hometown and several of the characters that have been mainstays throughout the entire series. It's pretty melancholic. All of this is due to Lan's dad, the world's leading net scientist, getting a new job in a place called Cyber City, where strides are being made to improve cyber society, and they're getting ready to hold an expo to show off all of their achievements. Thus, Lan and Mega Man start a new life in a new town with a new school. Despite being a set of heroes that have saved the world several times by now, they still have to introduce themselves and rebuild their social life. It ain't all bad though. Cyber City has a unique piece of technology called a copybot that projects a hologram around a dummy body to allow a net navi to exist in the real world for a limited time. Don't worry, it's still a Battle Network game, so while Lan's new school life will play a part, the main focus of the game is going to be on the two foiling terrorists, Lan interacting with the real world, and Mega Man battling on the net. And this strange girl keeps showing up during a lot of pivotal moments. Anyway, the story is good, better than most entries. They don't immediately spell out the whole evil plot like they usually do. You understand the bad guy's motivations a lot better, even if it's pretty petty in some cases, and there's a lot more twists and turns in this one. Some predictable, some that will likely surprise you. Most importantly though, this is the last game in the series and they stick the landing. Without going full spoilers, they wrap things up with a scene where they gently confirm that this is where the story ends, finishing off pretty much every remaining plotline, and delivering a satisfying conclusion. While there are several ways Capcom could revive the series, this was very clearly meant to be the finale when it was made, and if this is the last we ever get, I'd have no complaints. Well, other than the Robot Masters that never got net navi adaptations. The basic mechanics are the same. You still fight with your Buster, folder of battle chips, and your Navicust. The emotion window is still there for full synchro or angry for a boost if you either counter an enemy or are getting your butt kicked. There's still mystery data to snag for bonuses both in and out of battle. You still have sub chips for some extra help, and you can still find bug frags to trade in for some nice rewards. For the minor tweaks, you can still choose a default chip to always show up in your initial hand, but there's also a link chip function now, where you can pick two chips to show up together. This can be good for fishing for program advances or more basic combos, like a multi-hit attack and an extra damage add-on. The big game changers, though, come attached to the special transformations. Each title has 5 navis you can befriend: Heat, Slash, Elect, Charge, and Erase Man for Gregar, Aqua, Tengu, Tomahawk, Dust, and Ground for Falser. All you need to do is clear a mission with the navi in question, then beat them in a fight with Mega Man. After that, you can freely use the navi whenever you want by accessing them through their terminal, either to help out during parts of the story, or just to go for a stroll on the net, and you also gain their cross. These are pretty much double souls but better. Rather than sacrificing a chip, you can just select them from a menu at the start of a turn. Each of these have their own charge attack, can power up chips of the same element, and have a few other bonuses. Each can only be used once per fight, but the only way you lose one is to either swap to another cross, or get hit by the form's weakness. Heat still beats Wood, which beats Elect, which beats Aqua, which loops back into beating Heat, but there's a secondary circle. Break beats Sword, which beats Wind, which beats Cursor, which beats Break. The forms are split in such a way that the cross they're weak against is in the opposite game, which prevents you from having a major advantage against your allies, but can make online pretty tense. Then there's each game's Beast Out, which significantly powers up Mega Man. Both can auto-target with chips and have rapid-fire busters, with some additional buffs, Gregar tending to be a bit tougher and Fulzar covering more ground, but both kind of wreck. This lasts as long as his emotion counter, after which he'll be tired and won't have access to his other emotion states. Try to beast out again and he'll go berserk, which will leave him in a really rough state once that wears off. Never had to go that far before, so I'll just have to take Dad's word for it. Beast out can also be combined with crosses. In addition to the standard beast out perks, these also give a special charge attack by burning a chip. You can only select one transformation per turn, so it'll take 2 to activate a beast cross. Don't really use the beast out too often personally because I don't need to, but if you're struggling or want to get into competitive, it's a good thing to learn. In general though, the game gives you a lot of tools to make use of, so between your chips, transformations, and buster, you can decide what you want to use to tackle things. The human locations are interesting enough. Central City isn't too much to write home about, it being a pretty basic town with a chip store, square, and the school is mostly just a set of hallways with almost identical classrooms, but the expo at the end of the game is at least fun to roam through. Seaside has a basic tourist area, with a fountain and a few stalls to buy food and souvenirs, and the aquarium is designed to look like a whale. Go inside and there's plenty of tanks and enclosures for different animals, which, while no replacement for the real thing, are fun to look at. And if you read the descriptions on the displays, you get some interesting trivia. Greentown has a lot of foliage, as you'd expect, and there's quite a few meeting spots placed on top of giant tree stumps. The main building's a courthouse, complete with a courtroom, giant tree with a large gavel, and a punishment room, complete with zappy chairs. Yeah, while not very big, it is a nice locale that would be very pleasant to walk around. Skytown's in the sky, made up of a bunch of different walkways, making me hope that the place has liability insurance. There's a lot of different stuff thrown in here, from satellites, different machines with weird weather functions, a weather control device, computer rooms, elevators, and a giant robot weatherman. With such a crazy collection of things, it's also the easiest area to get lost in. In fact, it's probably the only one where I sometimes still get twisted around. And the final one is, spoiler, ACDC, set up exactly as it was in the last 2 games, but you can't enter any of the buildings, so it feels more like a nod to nostalgia than a full-fledged area. All you have to interact with there are NPCs, a chip trader, and the squirrel which serves as a jack-in point. While Central and ACDC are a little underwhelming, overall, I do enjoy exploring these areas and think that they look pretty good. Each of these also have a corresponding area on the net, and as you can probably guess, things start out fairly simple, with Central having a few side paths for bonuses, but the main one's pretty obvious. They generally get more complex and easier to get lost in as you go on. Seaside is a tourist trap, with a bunch of pool panels, at first there to get in your way so that you'll pay a toll for an easier way forward, then ones that seem to want to direct you towards a store. Green Net has a bunch of warp panels and walkways, stretching out like tree branches that mostly lead to dead ends. Sky has different staircases and levels, thus it can be hard to navigate without a map to see the big picture. ACDC is pretty small and straightforward since, even though it is pretty close to the end of the game, you're not meant to be there too long, and while the layout is new, it is supposed to be a familiar area, so you getting too mixed up wouldn't make much sense. And the Undernet, at the back of Sky area, is once again a confusing mess for you to lose your way in, until you do enough trial and error. Though that's typically the point, and I'd still say they dialed back on how big and complex it is. Each area also has a signboard with a map you can check, and there's some rush bait you can buy that you can expend to create either paths to mystery data or a permanent shortcut. So if you are having trouble finding your way, you can make it a bit easier to get around by burning some resources. There's also a few obstacles that can be eliminated by certain link navis to uncover a secret, so it's worth taking note of which is where and making a special trip with your allies. And of course, all the main areas, with the exception of the Undernet, can be reached through Central. Plus, you can create shortcuts by linking home pages, making it pretty easy to get to where you want to go without needing to physically take land somewhere to jack in. Of course, the main attraction is going to be the dungeons. The robot control area sees you running around dousing Mr. Progs that are on fire. When passing certain points, waves of heat will start manifesting and you'll need to hide behind a block to avoid taking damage, you wanting them to be between you and the direction the flames are coming from. The aquarium is certainly something. At first, you get empty tanks labeled with what's missing. You need to find a Mr. Prog, listen to how they describe themselves, then take them back to the appropriate tank. If you read the displays in the physical world, you should be able to match them up pretty easily, but even if you didn't, it's not too hard to intuit where each belongs. The real challenge is what happens when you grab your prog though. Sharks appear in the watery maze-like pathways, and you need to get back to the beginning of the area without getting hit, the Mr. Prog getting sent back to where you found him if you do. This is one where the smaller screen is a huge detriment, since you need to carefully plan your route to make sure you don't get pincered by multiple sharks, or just run right into them when you turn a corner. But the smaller GBA screen can have you wandering into a lot of no-win situations. Still, you can kinda get a feel for how things move and what'll be where when, so while I won't say that it can't be a bit frustrating, it's not game-ending. In the judge tree, there's one rule: don't step on the grass. Green pops up on the brown patches of dirt after you walk over them, so basically, you need to make sure you don't walk over the same space twice. Might be worth mentioning that for most of these puzzles, clicking the button to talk to land will have them ask you if you want to look around, making it so that you can actually plan ahead. The fun thing about this one is that there are buttons that you need to hit to open a gate to proceed, but there's also mystery data. While it's pretty easy to just rush through and clear the area, getting the bonuses as well requires some actual thought, with more meandering paths, it being a lot easier to accidentally trap yourself in the process. I like how this one shouldn't stump anyone just wanting to proceed, but rewards those willing to engage with it a bit more. Mr. Weather has big open areas, but if you take a ramp up to the level above, you can ride a cloud to explore a bunch of other cumulus platforms and paths. These will grant you a bunch of mystery data, as well as different parts of a rainbow, though some colors are also just chilling in the open air as well. Once you have all of them, you want to lay down a chain of spheres to encircle typhoons and clear up the weather to let you proceed. This can be a little tricky since while they will hold still for a bit, the typhoons can also just move and either mess up your plans or knock you off your cloud, but with patience and a bit of luck, it isn't too bad. Then there's also the underground, which is a dungeon, but it isn't. It's connected to Central 3, so you could say it's part of the wider net, but it is also a special area that you need to get to the end of, complete with a puzzle gimmick that you need to complete. But that puzzle is something used earlier in the game, during a chapter where you had to travel through the regular areas, so whether you count this as a dungeon is up to you. Either way, moving on to the puzzle, there's fiery spirits that you need to kill to advance. You get a handful of soul weapons that you can use to do so, each having different ranges and hitboxes. While the spirits have 3 different HP values, you can take them out in one regardless if you strike them from behind, and if you're too close when hitting one without finishing it off, they'll counter. So as you can probably guess, this is all about using your tools as efficiently as possible, you really needing to consider which weapon to use when, and how you line things up. If you do a good enough job, you'll have some weapons left over, that get converted into bug frags for a nice little bonus. Then finally, there's the Pavilion Network, which has 4 areas that are just more advanced versions of the ones you already dealt with, ending in a boss because every Mega Man game needs at least something close enough to a boss rush. While not as creative as something totally new would be, it still is a nice culmination of your journey and allows you to jump right into the finale without needing some long-winded explanation for what the gimmick is this time. While I will say there's a definite stinker in this set, I think they did a pretty good job with the areas on the whole. Most dungeons are just 3 sections long, which is enough not to feel throwaway, while also not overstaying its welcome. While the standard net might be a little confusing the first time you enter most sections, it shouldn't take too long to memorize the main path. If that still sounds too annoying, there's always online maps, on top of some of the shortcuts you can create. I generally enjoy traversing most of these locations, with it rarely feeling like the game is wasting my time. There's a good mix of old and new enemies here. You get your classic Mets and Swordies, some that were introduced more in the middle of the series like wind boxes and trumpets, and some totally new stuff, like the planes and the little birds with honeycomb. It's like they took the best of the best and the most iconic, making it a celebration of the series, while still coming up with some new weird ones to avoid things becoming too static. As for bosses, there's a lot of them. Each game has 5 unique ones in the form of your Link navis. While beating each of them will come with some pretty major advantages, all but the first one, either Heat or Aquaman, should be optional. Still, the rewards are good and they are a pretty major part of the game, so unless you're going for the speed run, I'd recommend hitting all of them. And since these are navis that you get to play around with before battling them, you should have a leg up on each. A lot of them use some combination of their charge attack, special attack, navi chip, cross charge, and maybe something unique to the fight, so you should be familiar with at least some of their moves, even during your initial bout. Some of them are also returning bosses that have been better balanced. Heat Man no longer locking you in place with his flame tower like he did in BN2, and Tomahawk Man now having a bird of prey to contend with, rather than a totem pole that would get him some major buffs. Then there's also the weaknesses I mentioned, which, while you won't have a cross that can exploit it, you can always stack your folder with chips that can. Or, because there are some enemies that can only be hit with sword weapons, they gave Tomahawk Cross a slashing attack to contend with this, which you can use to completely destroy Tengu Man. As for the standard bosses, Blast Man can fire straight ahead, but he can also do that thing that his stage does, send out a bunch of flames your way that you need to hide behind a block to avoid. Dive Man hides underwater, sending pairs of missiles your way that you have to sidestep. He'll rise up for big attacks, which is your cue to counter and maybe even interrupt whatever he's about to do. Circus Man hides in the back, hopping around, then either sending out a set of attacks that are vertical, horizontal, or dropping a cage directly on top of you. So reacting to whatever type of move he's trying to pull, then weaving around them is the big thing. Judge Man is a little straightforward, at least at first. Him just sending out moves like books that crawl forward or a whip directly in front of him, but when things start looking dicey, he'll summon a large tome that can not only block for him, but also hit back at you with its various attacks, including one that can trap you in a bubble for extra damage if he catches you inside it with his electric whip, so you gotta find a way to attack around that. Element Man can change what Navi type he is, specifically pulling from the original circle of Heat, Aqua, Elec, and Wood, and he has an attack for each of these. You can fight him normally, or if you're feeling confident, use your own crosses from the weakness chain to score some extra damage while hopefully avoiding anything that would be devastating to you. You also have to fight Beast Out Mega Man. He can use a few chips in addition to the standard buffs the transformation offers, so the difficulty of the battle comes down to a combination of how good you are with whatever Navi you decided to take into the encounter, and how familiar you are with that game's Beast Out. Colonel is back, and he's still got his weird sword swings that come out at odd angles, as well as missiles that can break panels, and his Colonel army, which can take pot shots. Gotta stay on your toes for this one, though if you played Team Colonel previously, you should have a better handle on the fight. And for the final boss, you fight your box legendary, either Cybeast Gregar or Falser. These guys are big, yet they move around a lot. They've got a good variety of attacks, typically either something small but quick, or big with more warning, so you need to be constantly moving around, watching out not just for where their attacks are coming from, but also where they appear so that you can hit them in the face. This can be tricky, especially with Falser, since it doesn't have a floor, so no grid to use as a reference. With as fast paced as this fight can be, it's not a bad idea to bring a bunch of attacks that you don't have to aim. I have used Blast Man's Navi chip and Slash Cross's charge attack. All this enemy variety gives you a good number of chips. While a few of the staples are there, like the swords and reflector, most are new and some of the old ones have even been tweaked. So while some things still work, like program advances will always be good and some Navi chips still just kinda take the wheel, you can't just recycle all your strategies from previous games and call it a day. Still, there's a lot of good chips here, which, combined with your other tools, should allow you to reduce most battles to mere formalities. Like I said earlier, you have a lot of tools, so bosses or small fry, figure out what works for you. The music is another strong point. While I would play some tracks from other entries higher than what's on offer here, at the same time, this OST is probably the most consistently good. Every other title typically has at least 2 or 3 tracks that I find repetitive or grating, but here, not even the emergency track sounds bad. In fact, you actually get 2, one that's your typical, hurry up and fix things right now, and another that's more subdued, still applying pressure but wanting you to think about the situation a bit more. Normally, they just give you a one-size-fits-all. The boss music is one of my favorites, it having an appropriate weight to it and just sounding really good. Each dungeon theme is also great, but vary a good deal in tone. The robot control comp sounds funky and irreverent. The aquarium has 2 tracks, it swapping out to a more panicky one when the sharks appear to hunt you down. The judge tree sounds almost relaxing, since the idea is for you to stop and carefully plan out a path, and Mr. Weather certainly feels stormy. I love them all, but my favorite is probably the one from the final dungeon, Two of Braves. It uses elements from the main theme, which is unique to this game, not just shared with previous titles, and is a really strong track, but also knowing that this is the end of your journey with Land and Mega Man adds an emotional punch to it, which further increases the impact. If you don't play this one last, you might not get quite as much out of it, but it's definitely an OST that's worth listening to. The sprite work is really sharp in this one. Everything is just pleasant to look at. All the things that I've already mentioned, the viruses, the environments, the characters, they all look really good, which is a big part of why I love them so much. Sure, Inirocorn hawking exploding kernels at you is wacky and creative, but if it didn't look so cute, I just write it off as another random thing Capcom decided to make an enemy. The weird little mech guy that somehow reminds me of Dragon Quest is so odd that if they weren't bringing their A game with the sprites, it'd be hard to know what you were even looking at, yet it manages to leave an impression. Someone in my chat even mentioned how the turret enemy has a little man with a helmet and binoculars, which is more detailed than the previous canon enemies typically got. The grass that sprouts in the judge tree looks great, I love Mr. Weather from Skytown's design, and when you go to the aquarium, not only are there a lot of creatures to look at, there's even some scenes where you interact with them, rather than just telling you about what you did through text boxes. While I think a few sprites might be ported over, I'm not sure how many, since some that would typically be prime candidates for this have been redone. Chief among them is Mega Man's battle sprite, where he takes a more confrontational stance. The whole game just gives you the sense that the team was aware that this was their last title and put their all into it. While graphics have certainly gotten more advanced since then, it makes the most of its pixels and manages to be timeless. At least in my opinion. This might be the easiest of the Battle Network games, either it or one. While there is a chance that, with this being the 6th game, my skills have just improved to the point where I'm underestimating the difficulty, I think the main reason why I don't find this one as challenging is due to just how many weapons you have in your arsenal. A lot of games start you out with some pretty weak chips, but here, I was constantly getting new stuff that I could rack up damage with quick. And some returning chips have even been buffed, Longsword now doing 100 instead of the previous 80. You get the Navicust a bit earlier, they give you a new Link chip function, and the first boss, while a pushover, gives you a Navi chip if you defeat his ghost that you can use to instantly clear 90% of random encounters for the first 3/4 of the game. Buster Max is looking pretty pointless right now. Then you get the crosses, which are pretty much just double souls with less requirements and restrictions attached. They feel so damn broken that I'd feel guilty about using them if doing so wasn't so fun. On top of that, you have Beast Out, which you can pair with crosses, but I never used it in my regular playthrough since the previous stuff I mentioned had me clearing most fights within one turn. There are a few instances of challenge though, some of the puzzle dungeons are pretty tricky, Circus Man's a bit tougher than most bosses, and most of the version 3 navis can put up a fight. The times where I had the most trouble though, were when I had to use anyone other than Mega Man. Each of the Link navis seem to have some sort of drawback, whether it be limited range, low damage, or slow attacks, and you can't customize them to make up for it. Not only that, but several of them seem set up for failure, like how there are enemies in Skytown where Elecman's based that heal from electric attacks, or how early on you need to take Heat Man through an aqua area, though at least he acknowledges that it's kinda bullcrap. It feels a little ridiculous how underpowered they are, given how good the crosses you gain from them are. You'd think the source material would be stronger. I can completely destroy Judge Man with Slash Cross, but when I took Slash Man through the area where his ghost was wandering, I kept getting wrecked before I could reach my destination. Your teammates in 5 were so good and fun to use that the struggle here can be baffling, though at least a good chip folder can compensate. Still, one of my few complaints with this game is how using your Link navis can feel like a punishment at times. But in more positive news, most of the things that I would complain about in past games have been removed or mitigated. There's plenty of puzzles that turn random encounters off until you complete them, so you're not constantly getting interrupted while trying to think, and others let you pause to scroll over the area to get the full picture, rather than limiting you to just what fits on screen. Most of the running back and forth is limited to optional side quests, and most main story puzzles are the sort that you can figure out on your own, nothing too obtuse. While there are plenty of guides online, I think side and post game are the only points where you might actually need one. One small gripe though is the request board. In the past, you could just take these on as they became available, but here, different ones have different ratings, and you need to build up your rank by completing the easier ones first. The problem is, they give you a mix of different ratings each chapter, but you're limited to just the 1-star request until the last, when you finally have enough of the 1 stars to raise your rank to the point that you can do 2 stars. It's just so frustrating seeing all these different missions that you're not allowed to touch until late game, especially when, for one of them, all you have to do is buy a chip from the store and meet a guy in one of the starting areas. They probably wanted to give the request board a feeling of progression, but I think they really fumbled how they handled it. Though back to my main point, when it comes to Battle.Network 6, I don't think they made the viruses and bosses any weaker, but they made Mega Man so much stronger that you don't even need to make full use of all your resources in order to demolish most enemies. And the stuff that you need to use your head for feels just right. So does Battle.Network 6 live up to how I remember it? For the most part, yes. I got more into it back in the day, but for a big game like that, your first run tends to be the most impactful, and I also had a lot more free time to actually hammer it out 20 years ago, especially when it wasn't packaged with 5 other games roughly the same size. At the same time though, it's still a lot of fun and easily my favorite, Gregor version in particular, and I feel like I'm incredible when I play it, though a lot of that might just be how empowering all the new gameplay options are. While this certainly isn't the first time Capcom's gone all out on a series finale, this one pulls it off maybe the best, it containing everything that made the series great and more, while also managing to be one of, if not the, fan favorite, letting Land and Mega Man go out on a high note. While that does leave me wanting more, and more wouldn't be an impossibility, at the same time, I can't complain. With that, we can start wrapping up, so let me ask you, have you played this one? If so, what version? And is it the best or overhyped? As always, thanks for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you're into retro games, especially Mega Man. This is the last jacket.